Well, reading involves a considerable amount of effort, I think, and participation on the part of the reader. It's not a passive form of entertainment or instruction, as if you're watching a television screen or a film. In a way, you're the object, and you're not having to do anything. In fact, you're not having to really exercise your mind very much. But with a book, you have to make the effort of actually absorbing what you read. You must have a command of the language in order to to understand it, and perhaps a certain empathy with the author or the writer, which will develop as you go along. So it in a way, so it exercises your mind much more, which in itself is something good, rather than just sitting back and have either entertainment or information directed at you. So this is something where you are actually in a way on the same wavelength as the writer or the author of the book. Well, it's all important, but of course the first thing is that the individual has to be literate. So it all starts with education at the primary level and the junior level, and in good schools they will encourage the child to read, and parents who are responsible ought to be doing the same. Of course, you get now in our country over the last 20, 30 years, a lot of children going to school and their parents might not have gone to school. The parents might not have had the opportunity or chance to go to school because they could have been from poor backgrounds. But with the possibility of almost every child going to school, so you can't expect the parents there to be guiding the boy or girl in their reading habits. So it's there. A lot depends on the teacher, on the environment, and on the child himself. Well, you need intelligence to read. I'm not sure. I don't know if it increases intelligence, but it will certainly widen your mind and increase your imagination. It will help you to think. It will take you into other worlds. I think one isn't complete as an individual without having at least some sort of intimacy with books and reading. It's in these ways. It also helps you to be a judge of character. You're dealing with good books or literature, with the minds of perhaps great writers or philosophers, or not necessarily fiction writers. They could be historians. So it gives you a greater depth of in your search for knowledge. And reading leads to good writing too, and not just for a writer or an author of such as I am, but in any profession, a doctor, a lawyer, a businessman, a scientist, if he's fluent in the language, a doctor could sit down and write a medical book, or a scientific treatise. So the ease with which you write comes from the ease with which you read, and one thing leads to another. So it's got a tremendous advantage to it, I think, in anyone's life, and not necessarily a literary person either. I think if you look, there wouldn't have been any great or famous writer who hadn't read books. And I think if you look at all the famous people who have done anything in life. They would have had books, they would have had libraries. I mean, you can think of Pandit Nehru in jail, getting whatever books he could to read. I think very hard for someone who has grown up reading to do without it. And we today, I think, we have this tendency to blame all the technical advances that have been made for the absence of a reading habit. But reading has always been a minority pastime. Even if I go back to my school days over 50 years back, in a class of say 35 boys, there were just 2 or 3 of us who actually were fond of reading. I mean, everyone had to take a book off the library shelf, and it was usually put back unread. And in those days, there was no television, there was no internet, there were no video games, none of the things that we blame now for the absence of a reading habit. But if you didn't read then, what could you do? You had comics, or you went to the pictures once a month. That was it. So I would say reading was something that was a special gift in a way, that the lucky ones are those who became readers. And so the more we could have of readership, the better it is for everybody. It's something that I think one should cherish. Readership has increased with education. After all, today, 20, 30 years back when I was writing, I was getting books published. In India, a publisher once published a book of mine and priced it at 3 rupees, and nobody would buy it. Then I found it on the pavement, special price 8 annas, and still nobody would buy it. So it's not that we always had a lot of readers; they weren't there. And today, those same books and stories somebody will buy them for 200 or 300 rupees. So it's just that I think we are giving more importance to reading than we used to. I mean, we wouldn't be discussing it now. 30 years back, we wouldn't be thinking of it as something that's so important.